Good afternoon. Boy, it's good to see a good crowd here. Of course, I know at the first one. Unfortunately, I couldn't attend the second one because we had a retreat, the county commissioners, so I had to be there. But I'm glad we moved up here because you don't have to stand, because at the first one it was so tight. I would like to say it's really a pleasure to be here, and for me it's back at home. And it's a coincidence because exactly 1 month from today, September 23rd, I'll be back in this building with members of the class of 1962 from Stevens Lee. We'll be celebrating our 55th reunion. And you know, it's something back then, we were fighting to sit down at the lunch counters and trying to get in away from the balconies at the movie theaters to go to the Pack Memorial Library and all that. At that time, you know, I was one of the A-score kids, and I had no idea I would be here today, 55 years later, a member of the County Board of Commissioners, because you've got to remember the point in time that we came along then. But what I want to do, though, today is let's get in a topic that's really near and dear to me, and that's when we talk about the disparity in income. And really, it's more when we talk about wealth, because this is something I had no idea when I left college that, because I wanted to work a few years and maybe go back to law school. But once I found out that I enjoyed working in banking, 40 years later, I realized I never made it to law school, and I haven't missed it for any of you lawyers in the house. But one of the things I saw early on as a kid, I learned I was fortunate to come up in the family that I came up, the mom and dad, because they impressed upon us, it's really education. They told us that was the only way that we were going to level the playing field. And especially when I became involved in the civil rights movement, because Dad made sure he didn't care about how many times I was arrested as long as I stayed on the dean's list in college. He was happy with that. Because what he said, you can't take advantage of what you're fighting for if you're not prepared. Okay, and he was right. But let's get in. I've got some numbers here, which I hate dealing with. You know, you'll say a former banker, you don't like dealing with numbers, but no, not this type. But let's talk about some of the things I want to set the stage here. Is we start with the population of Buncombe County. And these figures, it's a 5-year estimate from 2011 through 2015. In the United States, 73.6 of the population during that time, the estimates from 11 to 15, 73.6% is white. 12.6% is African Americans. This was interesting. Now, in the 5 years before, the estimate 2006 to 2010, 74% was white and 12.5 was African American. So you can see the numbers are beginning to change. In North Carolina, from 11 to 15, you had 69.5% of the population. And by the way, at that time, I should have given you, in America, it was 316 million, and in North Carolina, 9.8 million. 69.5% were white, 21.5% African American. And the 5 years before that, it was 69.6% white and 21.4% African American. So that 0.10%, a tenth, is the same that was changing nationally. And in Buncombe County, though, it's 88.7% white and 6.6% African American, and it stayed basically the same from 6 to 10. So we've been about the same for that time, according to the figures I have here from census. Now, when we look at the total population during that time, when you talk about the Latino population in North Carolina, from 11 to 15, it was 17.11%. 17.10%. And in 5 years before that, it was 15.7%, where here in Buncombe County, it's 6.4% now, or around that, and it was 5.5% before. So we're actually growing on the Latino population, not as much, but these figures, if you look at them, the actual figures today, it's going up, though, all the time. And let's talk about per capita income per capita. I think you've got that one. What happened, I emailed a lot to him. Some didn't come through. You know how that works. If you look here, you'll see in the United States, the per capita income in the past 12 months, this is in 2015, inflation-adjusted dollars, was $28,930. In North Carolina, it was $25,920, and in Buncombe County, $27,066. Now, for African Americans in the United States, it's $19,378. North Carolina, it drops to $17,965. And in Buncombe County for African Americans, it was $15,335. Now, when we look at the Latino population, same time, it was 16,674 in the United States. North Carolina, $13,110, and in Buncombe County, $13,121. Think about that, living in Buncombe County with that income. Another thing to go along with this is the availability of jobs. This is something we need to think about too. There were 5,061 people looking for work in Buncombe County compared to 6,496 job openings as of 12/16, December of 2016. The city's unemployment rate was 3.7% in December of 16 compared to 3.9% in December of 15. The African American unemployment rate was in the teens, probably around closer to the best I could get to it, around 14%. Now think about that. But we couldn't fill all the jobs that we had. The poverty rate by race in Buncombe County, 33.9% of African Americans live in poverty, okay? 35.6% of Latinos and 13.2% of whites live in poverty on an average from 2011 to 2015. And remember, we're talking about disparity in income, and I hope you can see where I'm going. There'll be plenty of time for questions, because don't worry, I'm not going to stand up here and make the place hot for you. So Keenan already told me that. But let's talk about another statistic that's important here is, and I hope you have this, you don't have the housing units, you didn't get that one, is occupied housing units. This is home ownership versus renters, okay? Owner-occupied dwellings in the United States and it's estimated 116,926,000 in the country, okay? Owner-occupied, 74,712. 74,712,000, I'm sorry. Renter-occupied, 32.2 million. 42, I'm sorry. So 63% of the people in America live in owner-occupied homes during this time. 37% are renters. Now, let's break that down and look from 2011, these are estimates, through 15. Let's talk about the African American population in America. Owner-occupied, well, just the total, the estimate of homeowners, of people living, it's 14,186,983 households in America. 6,014,000 of these are owner-occupied. 8,172,000 are renters. In North Carolina, we're talking about 791,632 households. 366,871 are owner-occupied, and renters are 424,761. And remember, I'm still talking about the African American population in the state. Let's talk about Buncombe County. It's 6,382. 2,671 are in owner-occupied homes. 3,711 are renter-occupied. So for Buncombe County, 42% of the African Americans live in owner-occupied homes, while 58% are renters. And the Latino population, it's 14,410,000 in America, 6,600,000 owner-occupied, 7,786,000, I'm rounding these off, are renter-occupied. In North Carolina, it's 218,900, and owner-occupied are 92,900, and renter-occupied 126,027. And in Buncombe County, you've got 4,472. 1,731 are owner-occupied houses. 2,741 are renters. So in the county of the Latino population, that's 39% live in homes that they own or buying, and 61% are renters. This gives you some idea, I hope, of where I'm going. And what I'm trying to do when we start talking about personal wealth, I tried to simplify it, because this is a Al Whitesides chart, so if you have any, you have to, although I have to give Shirley credit for making it pretty for you, because it wouldn't be like that if it was for me. And also for the figures, I'd like to say that I thank Lisa and her group from Buncombe County, Heidi from the Chamber of Commerce who helped with these, and Catherine Mitchell, who was always my standby when I need. She's almost like, in the old days when we had encyclopedias, well, she's the one I call when I need information, along with, a lot that I gathered. But they helped me in getting this information. But let's talk. If you look here, look at this chart. What's in the heart of the chart? Jobs. It's no way that you can amass wealth or even think about it if you're unemployed and you're not working. But when you look at wealth, you know, a lot, and this is one thing, I saw a lot of it. I saw a lot of wealthy people in my time working and a lot of poor people. Probably more poor people than wealthy, unfortunately. But one of the things is when you come from a family and you inherit it the old-fashioned way, you know, it's easy, as long as they have taught you how to take care of it, because most of the wealth is transferred through inheritance, okay? And on the other side of the coin, when you look at if you inherit it or if you make the money, you've got to have education. You've got to be trained. Let's face it. You know, when I look today at some of our ball players or look at people winning the lottery, you know, if you give somebody $400 million if they win it tonight, I think something like that, a lot less after tax, maybe that's after taxes, but if you give them that and they don't know how to take care of it, I guarantee you in 3 or 4 years they'll be broke. And if you read the national statistics, that's what happens. Or you look at professional ball players. I remember once talking to my dad. I said, I was about 35 and been working at the bank in time. I said, you know, if I was a professional ball player and had a $5 million a year contract, I would never be broke again. And my father laughed at me, and I said, what's so funny? He said, if you had gotten a 5-year contract when you were 21 years old, your mom and I would have moved in with a gun, a bullwhip, and a chair to keep you under control. And he was right. I thought about that because I wouldn't have known how to take care of it. And, you know, and that's one of the keys. That's why we've got to push for education. You know, we don't stand a chance without it. And let me give you some figures when you talk about that. Buncombe County school system graduation rate, the most recent I can find for 15 and 16, was 8.7%. Graduate, 85.7% graduate. 85.7%. I'm way off. I'm sorry. Compared to 85.6% in 15 and 16. Asheville City Schools graduation rate in 14 and 15 was 85.4%. The graduation rate for African Americans in the county system was 80.2% compared to 85.3% for Latinos and 86.3% for whites in 15 and 16. So we still have a way to go. Because, you know, when I was on the school board, we were bragging about reaching, I think then, around 78 or 79%. And I think the superintendent was not happy with me when I mentioned in the school board meeting that was sad numbers. We need to be at 99.9%. I'll give them 1/10. You don't settle for the numbers that I just gave you because, you know, we need to keep pushing for even more. And home ownership, we talk about that. You look at home ownership. The Housing Authority in Buncombe County, 3,000 plus residents, or 65% are African American. And the average home price in the Asheville area that's according to figures I got this summer in July, $316,000. Now you think about that. Most of the people working here, or a lot of them, well, I'm probably safe to say most, don't even make the wages that will make it possible for them to become homeowners. And that's something we've got to push. And what we have done at the county, we're looking for the first time now in 10 years, we're changing our incentive program for companies, money that we give companies to move in Buncombe County, if they are not paying an affordable wage, and the other thing is, if they aren't diverse in the people they hire, they're not going to get any money. So it's time to stop it. We're not giving them. I walked in one company that we gave a large amount to, and they've hired quite a few people, and are coming back to us. But what really got me when I walked in this business, this company, and this is a large national company, no African Americans, not one. And I mentioned it to the manager too. So we are talking about that. And if they come back to the table, we're going to have to change that. But they're changing because they are getting some heat from above anyway, not only from locally. But these are the type things, if we're going to make changes in the wealth and what people do, we can't. You saw last night what I did on television, I'm sure. When you have a captain of a ship that if we leave him there, he's going to sink us, it's no way we can expect anything to be done nationally or at the state level for that matter. It's unfortunate. But we've got to do what we need to do locally. That's what's important. But now, state and nationally, though, it's one thing we got to do, folks. Vote. Vote. And that's one thing that I never made. I don't care if it's dog catcher, because I remember the people who died for me to be able to vote today. I can't forget that. And that's why it's important. And I tell young people, my grandsons, the day they turned 18, I all but broke one's arm. He had taken him to register him to vote. And he knows the vote, and my grandson in Texas. But these are things we've got to do. But in order for what we talk about, when we talk about wealth, let's talk about, though, if we're going to change things, if we're going to close the gap, wealth is just like the gap that we have in the schools. We've been talking about them to you. I'm almost white from talking about it. You go all over the country, and everybody has the same problem with the achievement gap. Well, when you look at income, the disparity, it's the same thing. It's time for us to stop talking about it and do something about it. And it's not something, it's like when I was in the Navy. We could change a destroyer. We could turn a destroyer on a dime. But an aircraft carrier, we needed more room to change. It takes longer. But you've got to start somewhere. But let's talk about jobs locally. If we're going to make changes and see the income, see things change for African Americans, or let's face it, Latinos, just poor people, period. That is a problem. We've got to start by setting examples in hiring. And it starts at the county and city level. We've got to do a better job in our hiring. And we can't just talk the talk. I've been hearing that all my life. We continue to talk, but the numbers don't change. But we've got to do something about that. And we can find qualified people to do the jobs. I'm not saying you hire somebody because of the color of their skin or because they're poor or whatever. We don't do that. That defeats the whole purpose. But we hire people who are qualified. And if we can find somebody who's qualified to run the landfill for Buncombe County, which is a big job, by the way, if we can find an African American to do that job, we can find them to do a lot more in this county, because we have hired a gentleman to do that. But we can do it. So it's but we've got to do, and we've got to, hold people accountable. When you talk about the government, let's talk about the institutions in our community, the school systems, county and the city school system. We have a superintendent of schools the second one in a row in city of Asheville who's African American. But when I go to Asheville Middle School to mentor boys over there, this year they'll be in the 7th grade, and they tell me it's one African American teacher, something's wrong with that picture, folks. I mean, we can find teachers, and don't give me, that. I hear people say we have trouble finding them, we can't do this and that. When I was at the banking, we needed a CFO at First Union. You know where we went to find a white man to be CFO? Australia. Mind you, we couldn't find anybody in America. But did you catch who I said we hired, a white man? You notice that. But we can find who we need to find. We've just got to put forth the effort and do that. Buncombe County schools, not a whole lot better. And one of the things, if we're going to close the gap in disparity with jobs, we've got to let these young people see people who look like them teaching them and come in contact with them. That's critical, folks. We've got to have that. That's why I'm who I am today, because of what started right here at Stevens Lee High School. I didn't know at the time when I went to school, and it was all African American. The school was black, everybody. I did not realize until I started reading and was on the school board that at the time, in the 40s, there was a time, Stevens Lee High School had the largest majority of black teachers in the state who had master's degrees. When we integrated the schools, Stevens Lee and Asheville High, back in the 60s, they had teachers at Asheville High who had to go back to school to get their bachelor's degrees. Think about that. Nobody from Stevens Lee had to do that. Matter of fact, it probably should have ended up being the head of most of the departments, if you were going to be fair. But this is what we've got to do. Mission Hospital, the largest employer in the community. I spent 12 years on the foundation board. I listened to them and still do about their hiring practices. They still got a ways to go. Now we're bringing in doctors now. We're bringing in people. We're making a start. But they can't drop the ball, because these are the institutions in our community who've got to set the example. And don't leave out Asheville Buncombe Technical Community College and UNC Asheville. We're making progress there, but we still have a long ways to go. I told the chancellor not long ago, I said, it's great. I feel privileged in some ways to have a building named after me out here, but I want to see more black students come through and see what they can do someday if they work. We've got to have the students, and that's critical. And last, when you look at organizations like SIBO, Buddies of Mine, small businesses, the Chamber of Commerce, these organizations have got to come up, and they have got to do their job too, to ensure that we're being fair with all people in the community. Folks, it's a case of where now we're at the point in America where all hands have got to get on deck. And if we're going to change the income disparities in this country, we've got to do just the basics. It's nothing complicated. But the key is we've got to start doing it. We can't, we can talk things to death. I'm tired of being on this board or that one or this deal, or spending all this money to bring in consultants to tell us what we need to do to help black businesses or minority businesses, small businesses, or bring consultants in to talk to us about how we need to work with African Americans and all this. Matter of fact, I ran one consultant out of my office a few days ago at the county because he was in to pick my brain to find out what we've done in the past to help small businesses, and then he was going to take it back and get a large check for it. I said, they can come to me and I'll give it to them free. I mean, and we need to stop that. To me, that's not a smart way to spend taxpayers' money. You know, we've got to do, I mean, you know, look, that's one thing about me. I'm very liberal, but when it comes to the dollars, I'm a banker. I'm conservative. I don't believe in just throwing money away, but doing it in the right way. But this is what we need to do when we talk about income. You know, it's not space science. It's not that at all. But we've got to be fair and treat everybody the same. But more than that, the key is, as my grandfather said, who was a baseball fan, he said, if you have a level playing field, we'll do well. He always said this is why blacks are great athletes. He said because it's a level playing field. We're all playing by the same rules. Think about that. But we need to do the same thing, because if we're going to be successful, it's going to take all the members of our community, no matter who they are or where they live. We're all in this together. You know, it's what's that old saying? Chain is only as strong as its weakest link. Well, we've reached a point in America that we've stretched that chain as long as we can go. We've got to make some changes. We've got to come together and have discussions like today. And it's not going to be easy either. It's going to be uncomfortable for all of us. But we've got to have these discussions and start doing what we need to do.